For those who may not know me, my name is Nebojša. My spiritual yogic name is Narayan, and apart from teaching Tai Chi in the morning, I also belong to the same Kriya Yoga tradition as the previous speaker, Nayaswami Asha. So we belong to a very long, very serious spiritual tradition, yogic tradition called Kriya Yoga. And our guru, our master, is Paramhansa Yogananda. So everything we learn, everything we know, and what we share with you, we learned from Yogananda through his disciple, direct disciple, who lived with him towards the end of Yogananda's life, called Swami Kriyananda, and you have books about him and you've heard stories about him. And today we're going to share a little bit about the theory and practice of Kriya Yoga. So whereas Asha was supposed to give you inspiration and invite you to action, I'm going to be a little bit more technical, so probably a bit more boring, but what can I do? That's the topic I've been given. So when I'm talking about this topic, I always remember my and Mukti's teacher who taught us, who trained us to be teachers of meditation and Raja Yoga. And when we were doing, we had like written exams, and we also had oral exams in which we had to give presentations on certain topics. And the teacher would give us topics from her intuition. Just look at us and she'll say, you will speak about this, you will speak about that. And this was, I think, 15 or 16 years ago when she looked at me and said, and you will be talking about what is Kriya Yoga. And here I am. So whenever I speak about this, I remember my teacher, who was very intuitive and to whom I owe a lot. Her name is Shivani, and she's Asha's peer. They were friends from the very beginning. I also want to say, there is a yoga school in Belgrade, Yoga Academy in Belgrade, where I also teach this subject, what is Kriya Yoga. But there I have 2.5 hours, which is never enough. So towards the end, like 15 minutes before the end, I look at the clock and say, okay, I have to wrap it up. And again, I always remember my teacher who would, at the end of our oral presentations, she would just show like 2, which means you have 2 more minutes and that's it. You have to finish any way you can. So I will try to be more concise now than I am when I teach 2.5 hours. Okay. So this tradition that we will be talking about is an ancient one. And I'll just name a few names, name a few gurus that have been keepers of this tradition, and then I will talk about the very science of Kriya Yoga more. So the first one that we will talk about is called Mahavatar Babaji. You may have heard of him. He's relatively well known in the yogic circles, and he's said to be immortal. He's achieved the highest yogic attainment, and he kept his body forever. You can read all about it in Autobiography of a Yogi, how that happened and how it continues. And he's sort of the patriarch and the keeper of Kriya Yoga, but also of some other yogic traditions. So from him, different lineages stem. And one of his most important Kriya Yoga disciples, at least for us, was a guru called Lahiri Mahashaya. Lahiri Mahashaya was a yogi of the 19th century. He died just before the beginning of the 20th century. And he was very important in many aspects. But one of them was that he was one of the first, if not the first yogi who was not a monk, who was not a hermit. He was a family man. He worked as an accountant. He went, into retirement. He had family. His descendants are still alive. So, he was one of the very few who never went to the Himalayas or to a cave. And that's the beginning of a new age of which Asha spoke. So, Before, if you wanted to be a yogi, if you wanted to spend your time dedicated to spiritual life, you had to run away from the people. You had to seclude somewhere. But now, at the beginning of the new age, look at us. I mean, I suppose we all have jobs or we go to school or something we do, and still we seek understanding, we seek spirituality. We want to spiritualize our lives, not run away from our lives in order to be spiritual. And another thing that he was very important for, he sort of broke the caste system. In India, there was a social system called the castes, and you were born in a certain caste and you would die in a certain caste, and you couldn't mix, and some castes are more privileged than the others, and so on and so on. So he would initiate into Kriya Yoga people of all castes, men, women, Muslims, Hindus, doesn't matter. Everything based on their level of consciousness and not on their social status, not where they were born, but what they were inside. And he had a lot of students, a lot of disciples, and many of them became gurus of their own lineages. So from Lahiri Mahashaya, we have very many different lineages, and one of them leads to us. One of his many very advanced disciples was Yogananda's guru named Sri Yukteswar. And unlike his own guru, Lahiri Mahashaya, who had loads of students, Sri Yukteswar had very few, because his training was very strict, like Spartan strict. So very few sort of survived his training, and Yogananda was one of them. But his role wasn't to have many students. His role was to show that we are now living in an age of energy, and also to train Yogananda to come to the West. And Yogananda, when he was born, he was predestined to come to the West. And he knew from the beginning that that was his life, his destiny, and his mission. And then we have Paramhansa Yogananda, who is my guru, our guru, and he came to the West, to America in 1920. And he stayed and lived there for the rest of his life, with a little break in 1935 to 36, when he came back to see his guru, and that's where Sri Yukteswar, his guru, left his body. Yogananda came back and remained there for the rest of his life. And Yogananda's mission was to show that yoga is a universal science. So it doesn't belong only in India, it belongs to everybody. Because we all have a body, we all have breath, we all have consciousness, we all have the chakras, so we can work with it. And yoga is not reserved for Indian people, just as the phone is not reserved only for the Scottish people because a Scotsman invented it. Okay? So we use universal laws to advance and to evolve our consciousness. There's another guru in our lineage that has to be mentioned, and that one is Jesus Christ. So many people think that Jesus Christ is on the altar among our gurus because Yogananda came to the West. So in order to sort of approach more easily the Westerners, but Yogananda said, no, he was a Kriya yogi, and he is a true guru of this lineage because he asked Babaji, high in the Himalayas, to send someone to the West to show people how to find the kingdom of God that is within us. Jesus said, if you ask yourself where the kingdom of God is, don't look here and say, oh, it's there or not there, but the kingdom of God is within you. So, and that kingdom of God is actually just an evolution of our consciousness, refinement of our consciousness. So the more we refine our consciousness, the more we realize that we are also divine. And Yogananda said that his mission was to show people that we are all divine. We're all the children of the same God. And Again, Yogananda, especially in the West, had a lot of students. He was what we jokingly call spiritual celebrity. Now we would call it an influencer. Okay, so in those days, I know he would have public lectures with 3 or 4 or 5,000 people and another thousands, a thousand or two waiting outside. He was that popular. He was that much in demand. And of those, many of them became his students. But again, some of them just left. Some of them just came because he was, a trend. He was in, and not because they were serious spiritual seekers. But those who stayed, really, many of them became very, very great. And one of them is our friend Swami Kriyananda, from whom we've learned most of what we are sharing today. So we have Jesus, Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, Yogananda, and then from Yogananda, Swami Kriyananda. Okay. There are other stories about this, but I just don't want to burden you with history. I just want you to give you a context. Now, what is Kriya Yoga and why is it important? Kriya Yoga was first mentioned in, I keep looking there, but it's actually here, in the original edition of Autobiography of a Yogi. This is a reprint of that. So it was published in 1946, written and published by Yogananda. And this is where Kriya Yoga was first mentioned. And after that, it became globally known and popular. And a lot of saints and masters described in the book are actually Kriya Yogis. And they're Kriya Yogis of great attainment. And I don't know, no, it was in Belgrade where Asha spoke, and she said when she started reading autobiography and she got to page 10, she stopped reading because it was full of miracles. Suddenly, Lahiri Mahashaya appearing in a wheat field and talking to his disciples out of nowhere. But I loved it. I loved the miracles. But what I loved even more, it's not the miracles, is the explanation afterwards. So after every miracle, Yogananda explains how it happens, how it is done. So if there is an explanation, it's no longer a miracle, it's a law. Okay? If someone can explain and actually teach you how to do that, so it's not just for the chosen ones, it's for everybody. Okay? So Yogananda spoke about Kriya Yoga as science. And what is science? Science has very specific methods. One step leads to another, and then we get the final result. And another thing is that those results are repeatable. And if one person attains a very high state of consciousness, and then another, again, it's not a miracle, it's a system. So we will talk about Kriya Yoga as a system and as a science. But there's also part of it that's called an art, the art of Kriya Yoga. Because, we're not just craftsmen doing techniques. We also have to add a little flavor to it, okay? It is said, many people went to the same school as Michelangelo or Leonardo. Okay, they learned the same techniques. You mix blue and yellow, and you get green, and this technique and that technique. But only one of them became Michelangelo, not because he was taught something special, but because he added something special to what he was taught. Does this make sense? So when we do any kind of practice, it's not just techniques, because that would mean that whoever finds the best technique will be the most successful. But we have to find a technique that is right for us and then add a little flavor, okay? Now, what is Kriya Yoga? What is yoga? Yoga, in its original meaning, means union, okay? When you have two oxen, and you want them to plow the field, okay, this is going, you're very young, but I suppose you know the image, okay? Two oxen have a yoke, a wooden thing that put around their necks, so they actually walk together. Okay? In Serbian, jaram. Okay? And then you actually harness their strength to plow the earth. If you just let them loose, one will go there, the other will go there, and you will have no work done. Okay? So yoke means to unite strengths, to unite forces in order to achieve something. The same goes for yoga. We're all scattered everywhere. So have you ever made a New Year's resolution only to break it like 3 weeks later if we're lucky? If we're not lucky, like a week later or two. I'm quitting sweets. Good luck. Okay. Who's guilty of that? Yeah. I'm quitting smoking. So all these things. It's because what we want and what we can do are totally different things, because our forces are scattered. Yoga helps us unite those forces and send them in wanted direction. Okay? But I don't want just to unite all my own forces. I also want to unite myself with something higher and bigger than myself. Because we all know that no matter how good we are, how perfect we are in any area of life, we are still limited. We are still imperfect. And there is always something or someone that's better than us. Something or someone we can aspire to become like. And as Asha said, the word God is a useful one, but it doesn't mean much because there's no experience. It's just a theological idea. But if you think of perfection of everything, perfection of consciousness, perfection of joy, perfection of love. So we are all capable of loving, but can we all love perfectly? We are all capable of joy, but are we perfectly joyful? So there is always something that we need to aspire to. So yoga actually means union of our own individual self, spelt with a small s, small self, with a big or capital S, self. Okay? And that self is the divine spark that is within every one of us. That's the kingdom of God that Jesus spoke about. And Kriya Yoga helps us do that. Now, how do we do that? There is a book called the Yoga Sutras of a great master, Patanjali. And in the second line, the second verse, it says, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirod. Yoga is neutralization of vortices, of waves of emotions or agitated feelings. So we are not enlightened because we have too many of those vortices and they just take our energy everywhere. So when our energy tries to go from the lower centers to the higher centers, it just gets scattered everywhere or sucked in. It just gets blocked and it doesn't get much, doesn't rise much. So when we remove the blockages, the energy will flow on itself. We don't have to do anything in particular. We don't have to push it. We just have to remove the obstacles. Some of you come to my morning classes of Tai Chi. And also when we do movements, if you want to do a fluid movement, you just need to relax and remove the obstacles so that the movement isn't broken. The same goes for the energy inside. For any skill basically, if you want to get stronger, you need to basically train your nervous system to be a very good conductor of impulses. That's all we need to do. So, as we said, this is a science. This is not anything mystical. Okay, this is just how it works. And Kriya, so yoga means union of my little self with the greatest self through removing the obstacles. We'll talk a little bit more about the vortices and the karma and everything. But once we remove those, we become one with the infinite. And Kriya, the word Kriya, has the same root as the word karma. And I suppose we've all heard about the word karma. Karma means action. And action in this sense, karma means an action that's binding us, that's capturing us, and it's not letting us move forward. Okay, sort of attachment. Kriya is the opposite. Kriya is an action that frees us, that releases the energy, that expands the consciousness. It can be, there are many kriyas. There are even physical kriyas, like, when you clean your nose with like a little teapot. Have you done that? Those who do hatha yoga. So that's a physical kriya. Basically, you are cleansing your physical body with a salty water. Okay? But this kriya that we are talking about, and it is called Kriya Yoga of Lahiri Mahashaya, it works internally. So it's not about the body, it's about the energy body. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we perform a ritual, an action that removes the blockages, that removes the obstacles, so that the energy can flow freely from the lower centers to the higher centers. And that's how we actually realize who we really are, children of the same God. That's how we find that inner kingdom. Okay? Okay, now how does it work? That's the thing, that's what I wanted to talk about. We have three bodies. As Asha mentioned earlier, first we have an idea, then we put a lot of energy, and we have a final product. The same goes for our bodies. So the consciousness needs vehicles to move through this world. So first, our consciousness, our soul, gets an idea body. It's called the causal body. It's made of ideas, of thoughts. But thoughts, if you don't put any energy in your thoughts, they just remain thoughts. Nothing happens. But we need to move through three layers of this reality. So the second layer is energy. So we need an energy body, and I suppose you all heard about the chakras and the nadis and the aura. So that is part of our energy body. And that's what we are working with mostly in Kriya Yoga. And of course, then we have the physical body, which is the final product. Like, it's the grossest, the most tangible thing, and the least reliable thing, I have to say. So everything goes from higher to lower, from more subtle to denser and grosser. And energy is essential for all of that. Without energy, we can't realize any of our thoughts. We can't realize any of our ideas. So we have the chakras that are actually part of our astral or energy body, the middle body, the one that is the medium between the causal body, the body of ideas, and the physical body. And we have the three main channels, energy channels. The first one, the most important one, is where our karma is and where our enlightenment happens. It's called Shushumna. You don't have to remember any of this, just is the middle channel. And we have two parallel channels, like the side channels. They go like DNA, around Shushumna, and they start from here and they end here, from the first chakra to the sixth chakra, and they're called Ida and Pingala. Okay, and they represent duality. So when energy goes up, we inhale and we sort of feel like everything is fine and cool. You go out on a lovely day like this in nature, wonderful, and you want to inhale, everything goes up. Suddenly, unfortunately, you hear bad news, like someone's crashed your car. You're not getting a raise that you expected. Suddenly, everything falls down. Okay? Because energy drops. So we live in this world of duality. But there is also a world of unity, and that is what yoga is for. That is where yoga brings us. That is this central channel. So the more we live in our side channels, the more we're like on a swing, going here and there, and not able to calm ourselves. Okay? When we manage to sort of get control of our energies and our emotions and our consciousness, we suddenly suck the energy in, and it starts flowing through the middle channel, the most important one. And suddenly we can sense at least a little of that unity. Okay? There is no duality anymore. And that's how Kriya Yoga works. Kriya Yoga pulls the energy in and up. Now, in order to live in a physical body, energy has to come through this part here. It's called the medulla oblongata, and it goes straight into the center of the head, goes down the shushumna, the central line, and then goes out to feed the nerves, to feed the internal organs and extremities and so on, okay, limbs. But if in order, and that helps our physical body function in the world. So I'm moving, waving my arms a lot. So that means a lot of energy is going there. But if I stand still, none of the energy goes to my arms. I can actually use that energy that's not being used anymore to suck it in and send up. And that's how I start unblocking those vortices. Okay, how are those vortices made? So when we talk about those vortices, we basically talk about karma. Karma is an action. Okay, our lives are all sort of guided by two principles. I like this, I don't like that. And if you walk into a shop, you will not buy the most practical shoes. You'll buy the shoes that you like the most. Okay? Or you will not buy those that, oh, those look ugly, right? Okay, I see the girls are laughing. Okay, so I got the point. But it applies to just about anything else. You know, you're not going to buy this car, you're going to buy that car. Why? Because I like it. I'm going to be with this person and not with that person. Why? Because I don't like this one, but I like this one better, right? So that's how we work. So up and down. I like it, I don't like it. And as long as we are on that, like a merry-go-round, you know, it just keeps repeating. Have you watched the film Groundhog Day? Dan Mramota, for those. If you haven't, please do. It's funny, but it's also very educational. So this guy, very selfish, very self-centered, gets to repeat one day for God knows how long, okay? And first he uses those days, the repetition of those days, for his own benefit. He gets the money, he eats all the sweets he can because he knows that tomorrow it will just start from the beginning. And so, and after a while, he realizes that he is not happy. He's just, Yogananda calls that anguishing monotony. And after a while, he spends, I don't know how many days, killing himself in different ways. He drives off a cliff, he jumps off a church, I don't know what not. And again, you know, the next morning he wakes up and there he is again, still unhappy. Okay, in the film, I'm not going to reveal everything, but he's in love with Andy McDowell, who wouldn't be, of course, and he wants to win her heart. But she's also very, not just beautiful, but also very elevated person. And he starts becoming a better version of himself because he's in love, because he wants to be loved. And suddenly, after being selfish, after being, killing himself for how many times, he decides, okay, I'm going to help others. Then he becomes, he changes a flat tire to 3 old ladies and so on and so on. So he becomes unselfish. He forgets about himself and then he's happy. That's just what Asha said. Okay? And suddenly, one day, okay, he wins the girl, he gets the girl. And suddenly, one day, the curse stops and he wakes up and the life continues. Why? Because he's no longer selfish. He doesn't think about himself anymore. So that's how karma works. That's how reincarnation works. I want this, I don't want that, and because of that, I have to come back and see if it will make me happy. And of course, it won't. Because even if everything is perfect, it will end. At least because I'm gonna die. And whatever I have in life, I'll have to leave behind me. and then I get to do it all over again, and then I say, maybe if I'm a famous actor and I become a famous actor, rich, and then I start doing drugs because there's too much pressure. All these sad stories that we hear. But once we realize that our happiness is not out there, but that the kingdom of God is within us, and that the joy that we're seeking is inside us, that's where we start to look for it. And I was once asked at a lecture I gave, is it wrong to look for God, whatever you want to, however you want to envision God, outside? Do we only have to look it inside? I say, no, God is everywhere. Of course, He's also outside. But if you only look for Him outside, that is wrong. Because you can only experience whatever joy, whatever love, whatever peace you have inside. So always go inside. So whenever we have a thought, we said every thought creates a little vortex of energy, just a little bit, a little vibration, a little wave. And if I don't do anything about it, it will just go away. It will dissolve. If I get attached to it, I don't have to put any energy in a physical way to make it manifest, but I can actually just think about it a lot and get attached to it. And that, again, causes suffering. This girl left me when I was 17 and I have this trauma that all women are the same, and 50 years later I can't find love because I still think that they will behave like that girl 50 years ago. It doesn't work that. I mean, it works that way, but it will not bring us happiness. It's just a wrong way to live. Or, something wonderful happened to me and I just can't move on. I keep going back to that experience, like trying to relive it. It's not going to work because every moment is unique. Every moment is, impossible to repeat. So, whenever we have a thought or act on that thought, we create a little vortex of energy. And the more energy we invest, the stronger that vortex is. And what does a vortex do? Like a whirlpool in a river, So it's a big spinning thing. Whatever gets into the whirlpool, it gets sucked all the way to the bottom, okay? And it's very hard to get out of it. So have you ever had that experience, like you're in a bad mood and whatever happens, you just want to get everyone and everything just drown with you? Or the other way around, if you're super happy, you just want to take everyone with you. So again, neither is good because they are extremes. You want to be balanced in everything. But the thing is that every movement of energy creates magnetism, and magnetism creates attraction. So if my thought before the energy moved was bad, negative, I will create negative magnetism and I will attract negative things. But just as an opportunity to resolve that vortex. The same goes for the positive things, but if I'm attached, I can't move on. And now, as we mentioned New Year's resolutions earlier, okay, why do they not work? Because they're only in the mind, okay? We're not just the mind. Mind is just the surface of everything, but the energy is more real, okay? So I can say I'm not eating sweets from tomorrow, but once I get into a shop and see, you Serbs, you might understand, štarkove napolitanke, okay? Okay, that's a real challenge for me. Very special, like chocolate wafers, okay? So, and it's so easy to, to lose that battle, okay? So doesn't matter how strong my determination is, if my energy doesn't support it, I'm lost. Okay, now what I need is more energy and more of focused energy. Okay, because if it's scattered, again, this is what do you call it? A comparison we often make. you have a light bulb at home. It's light, it's photons, okay, but they are dispersed. So a certain amount of energy dispersed, useful, but not focused. Okay, and you can read, you can do things using it, but you can't have an operation on the eye using it because there's no. But if you take a laser, the laser is the same thing, photons, only focused, and you can cut diamonds, you can cut through anything, you can have surgeries using it because there's focus, like one single file of photons. The same thing, just organized differently. So what Kriya Yoga does through specific techniques, it prevents our energy from flowing down and out, and it sort of draws it in and up. So we use different breathing techniques, different concentration techniques, different mantras, and a very special thing called energization exercises, which Yogananda himself designed. So it's a set of 39 exercises. They look like physical education exercises in a way, but they're much more effective and much deeper than just stretching about. We'll do a few of them just to give you a taste. And why are they important? Yogananda invented them, designed them, using all yogic knowledges, all yogic wisdom, but he sort of wrapped it up in a very nice and easy to digest format. Because if you want to succeed in anything, you need a lot of focused energy. And these exercises help us to feel the energy and also help us to control the energy. If you know the word pranayam from yoga, it's usually used to describe breathing techniques. But breathing is just, again, it's a physical manifestation of energy movement. What comes first is the movement of energy. So when energy goes up, I will inhale. Like, wonderful day, bad day, yeah, but my breath follows my energy movement, not the other way around. We can use the breath to sort of regulate it, but energy comes first. So we don't depend on the breath so much, we depend on the mind. We depend on concentration. So if I want to tense a muscle, I have to find it, I have to focus on it, and I have to squeeze it. And in order to squeeze it, I have to send energy into it. And that's how they work. So you send energy, you release, and you become aware of it. So that gives us not just more energy, but also awareness, the awareness of energy. Does that make sense? So because we can only control what we are aware of. If we're not in touch with it, we can't control it. So likes and dislikes create these vortices, and they sort of clog up our central channel. So the energy wants to go up. It starts going up and then it gets sucked into one of the vortices. If it's a small vortex, some energy might go past, but if it's a stronger vortex, it just goes straight in. So we want to break those vortices. So instead of doing years of therapy, and I don't say that therapy is not useful, it's a pedestrian way, it's a slow way, because you never can fully become aware of all your subconscious realities, but you can basically unblock them on an energetic level. So if you just unblock your vortices, your mind changes immediately. Not immediately, but on its own. I'll use my wife as an example. Okay, now you all look at her. Okay, make her uncomfortable, because that's what husbands are for. Okay, now this is a real story, real life story. Okay, she used to be, but the point is, used to be very grumpy in the morning. Okay, when she woke up, before her second coffee, I couldn't even talk to her without be looking like, what are you talking? Why are you talking? Okay, and that went for a few years. So you can ask her, okay, if you don't trust me. It is true. And she sort of decided to do energization and meditation harder and more regularly. Okay? And after a while, I actually noticed without her working on that flaw, she just sort of emphasized what is good for her. Actually, we could talk in the morning, and now we can even laugh in the morning. Okay? It is true. It seems insignificant, but it's not. Because if she kept, like, we've been together for 25 years, if she kept like that for how long? For 25 years, I mean, maybe we wouldn't be together. Yes, but she never planned on changing it. She just did something else. She emphasized the good side of her, and the bad just withered away. Okay? And it happens with many other small things that are not too important but still bother us. They're still sort of keeping us from progressing. And the more we unblock the vortices, the karmic blocks, the freer we become. So we don't depend on compulsion from within. I don't have to buy Napolitanke, okay? I can choose whether to buy or not to buy, but I'm not compelled, okay? Now, what do we do to improve our focus, to improve our flow energy? There are many things we can do. For example, when we chanted, if you chanted with us, did you feel more or less energized as you chanted or afterwards? I'd say more. I mean, if you fell asleep, that's also fine. But if you chant, your energy can't drop. If you exercise, your energy stays elevated. If you meditate, you have to stay focused. So in our tradition, meditation is not just lie down and sort of relax. No, that's relaxation, that's fine. But meditation is being fully awake and fully aware. So we are going to do a meditation very soon. So get ready. Also, we use prayers. Why do we use prayers? Because prayers sort of remind us that we don't depend on ourselves. We depend on a source that's bigger and greater and more powerful and more loving than us. So when I pray, I open myself to receive something greater. If I just think, oh, I'll just improve my current self, my current self is not that good. If I get very good at becoming just me, limited me, no, thank you not. But if I sort of forget myself, if I lose myself, my limited self, then I make space for the greater self. And then I get freer and I get happier. And that's the point of everything, right? So why do we buy these shoes? Because we like them. Why do we like them? Because we think they will make us happy. Why do we not hang out with these people? Because we don't like them. Why do we not like them? Because we believe that they make us unhappy. They don't make us unhappy. We are unhappy. We are just triggered by something that they bring. But that unhappiness is already there, just as that happiness is already there. Does this make sense? Okay, so Kriya Yoga is a science, but also it's so much fun. And it doesn't have very many techniques. If we put them all together, like we'll have 20 techniques, at best. But you do them all your life, and you just become better and better and better at it. If you want a heart surgery, God forbid, you don't go to a general practice doctor. You go to a cardiologist because he's specialized in that. So if we want to become good at something, we need to specialize at something. If we just do this and a little that, and we mix it, and we are the criterion, like we are the filter. Oh goodness, no, because I'm not a very good filter. Again, if I were any better, I would be any better. Yeah. So, do we have any questions about that? Does this make sense? Because we can talk again. 2.5 hours is not enough, so I could do talk even more. But do you have any questions before we move on to the practical part? Yes? Kako se zove škola? Okay, the question is, what is the name of the school where we teach? You mean Kriya Yoga? It's called Ananda, Serbia. And you have leaflets here you can take. And also we can talk later and I'll tell you all about it. So yes, we've been in Serbia since 98. And Mukti and I have been leading it since 2007. So almost 20 years now. If you feel attracted to this, we have free public talks. There will be more on YouTube. We are slowly putting them on. We have workshops on healing, Yogananda's techniques of healing and so on. So please be in touch if you're interested. We will gladly help you and explain everything. Yeah, but it's Ananda. Like Asha is from Ananda Palo Alto, Dambara is from Ananda Worldwide or Ananda Village. Dambara is the musician. Atul, our videographer, is from Ananda Houston. So we're all part of a huge spiritual family dispersed all over the world, like little droplets of light.